I'm sweating.
And we're back. It's a Wild Business Growth Podcast, episode number 4. At this rate, we'll have an episode for you to consume before each and every meal. I've already lost count. With 4, I'm down. I'm counting on my toes already. But anyway, this is a Wild Business Growth Podcast presented by Hippo Direct. I am your host, Max Brandstetter, digital marketing guy at Hippo Direct. This week, we have an incredibly funny, incredibly talented writer slash comedian slash copywriter slash Twitter super user, you name it. I call him a Renaissance man in the episode, and he misinterpreted what that meant, so we'll let you discover that later in the episode. But anyway, he is a friend from college and doing some really funny things out there. Our first guest to go viral, full-scale viral on Twitter, so he can tell you a little bit about that in the episode, so stay tuned and enjoy the show. This week, we have an amazing guest. We are super excited to have the modern day Renaissance man, Mr. John Savitt. We will cue the Space Jam theme song in the background. We'll edit that in after. But anyway, John Savitt. John, we'll give you I'll do a brief summary of who you are from my perspective, and then you can talk about who you are from your perspective, because I'm sure you're good at that. So John is a modern day Renaissance man. He is absolutely hilarious, entertaining on Twitter. He's been featured in a bunch of different websites as a writer. He's been featured in Time, Washington Post, MTV News, Huffington Post, you name it. He is the funniest man since Ron Burgundy. He has probably done more for Twitter than Jack Dorsey. And
keep going.
Really, yes, exactly. He has, he's really good at paying off podcast hosts to keep going. But anyway, we could go all day about his intro. But anyway, Savitt J for sure is the best way to find him. And he's really, brightening up people's day in the humor world, in the writing world, in the content marketing world, you name it. So John, after that, I'm going to take a breather, but thank you for joining. So happy to have you on. How are you doing today, John?
Yeah, of course. And you really nailed that script that we wrote beforehand. So nice job with that. And I do appreciate the kind words. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. This is obviously, we'll get into some topics that I'm pretty passionate about. And I always like to hear other perspectives, get people in the same room or on the same audio recording at least. And just thank you for having me here.
Oh, of course. We would, and we have been working on the intro for a solid, what would you say, 9 or 10 months? Yes.
Yeah, maybe a year.
A year. Since we started working on it before I even knew what podcasts were.
Before we even met, I didn't even know who you were, and we started.
No, exactly. It's a true underdog story. And here we are. So John, can you give a little bit, for those that don't know you, which I'm sure probably everyone in the world knows you at this point, can you give a little background of sort of where you're from, what you've done sort of in your career, in your youthful career so far, and what you're doing now?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll try to give the short story, and I'm sure we'll get into it in more detail later on. But essentially, in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I got into writing and specifically comedy. I was kind of trying to find my voice, and came across friends with similar interests who were doing sketch comedy and stand-up, and I just found out that I really liked that. So I think it was about like senior year of college, I got my first article published in College Humor, and then when I moved back to Minnesota, which is where I was from, I was like, okay, great, but how do I make money off of any of this, as a lot of people think after they graduate. And that's when I kind of started going down the copywriting and marketing and advertising road too. And, finding out how I could merge my two passions of comedy and marketing together to create really engaging stories. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say bullshit, but like,
yes.
From my perspective, a lot of the agencies and corporate businesses I was meeting with when I was looking for a job, I felt like we're just not really genuine and weren't really crafting their stories in a way that was appealing to me or, the people that I knew. And so I wanted to figure out a way to kind of cut through that noise. And I thought humor, the one thing that I try to use in my everyday life, I thought that was a great tool to do so. And, from there started working with a few agencies, doing some consulting, some freelance writing. As you noted so nicely, I was lucky enough to have opportunities to write in a few different publications like Washington Post, Funny or Die. MTV News was my first kind of full-time freelance gig. And, from there have just never looked back. And I've always loved to work with different agencies, different clients, whether it's, cybersecurity, whether it's financial industry. I'm working with someone in the NBA, an NBA player right now, and doing stand up and sketch writing and all of that on the side. So it's really been great. I'm really thankful that I've had the resources and the people to push me into like actually following what I want to do and not necessarily settle in. And I still recognize that I have a ton of work to do to get to where I want to be.
Wow. Yeah. And when I say Renaissance man, I mean, you can hear it right there. You're doing so many different things. And from cybersecurity to NBA player, there's probably not too many people that are doing that. And I know you're also an astute fan of the Renaissance era. So, it's fitting for you.
That's what I thought you meant.
Yes.
I like, because when you said that, I thought you meant that I like to eat those big chicken wings like on the bone.
Yes. Huge.
And that's, yes, I am and that way I am a Renaissance man. Correct.
Perfect. Passion for giant chicken wings. So, and by the way, you mentioned both.
Do you want me off the podcast already? Do you want to just end now? You're like, what did I get myself into?
I think what we're going to do is we're going to kind of edit out your entire track and we'll just keep me talking.
Well, can't you do the thing they did in Star Wars where like, I'm not there anymore, but you use my or in 30 Rock with, I think it was Seinfeld, where you use like the audio clips and just piece together the story that you want. I think that would save us both some time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so this has been a great episode. We will see. No, but I think so. We'll use the Force. We'll stitch that together. And on your note, you said bullshit.
Awesome.
We are totally okay.
I'm a badass.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid.
That was strike number one, and now you're just fouling them off and staying up at the plate, which is impressive. But no, it's not going to be PG or 13. Well, a little swings every now and then. As long as every other word out of your mouth isn't the F word, we should be cool. We should be pretty good. So you don't have to say shucks. So, oh, by the way, for you listeners out there, John and I actually know each other going back from college. We were in the same fraternity in school.
Mm-hmm. We weren't friends. No. We didn't like each other.
No.
Yeah, I guess I saw you every
We
now
were
and
actually
then.
arch enemies, and it was kind of Capulets versus the Montagues and in Bloomington, Indiana. But anyway, so we know that. And I can vouch for John all the way back then, sort of as John was building his Twitter following and getting some of his content out there. I can vouch for how dedicated you were, John. And I know you still are about liking tweets and being engaging with people and networking, and even probably missed out on some partying back in college because you were going viral. So
it's actually funny that you mentioned that for a couple of reasons. One was that one of my friends actually had to talk me into getting Twitter. I didn't want to. This is where I sometimes have like these competing like perspectives in my brain, where on one hand, I think social media can be really damaging if done incorrectly.
Right.
And on the other hand, I think it can be a really positive tool to connect people and to tell authentic stories. So I usually, especially back then, I was like, no, I'm not getting Twitter. Like, how narcissistic do I have to be to like expect that people want to hear from me and hear my thoughts? Obviously, I eventually caved and got it, and I'm happy I did, because, and I'm happy to talk about this more, but it has led to a lot of tangible opportunities. And I try to talk about this a lot with people, but especially now, social media is this spring to so many. I mean, you can connect with almost anyone with a click, which I mean, it's led to some great stuff for me. But and on the second point, in college, I did actually the way I got my first gig at MTV News as a writer was literally by staying in on weekends. I know this is going to make me sound like really not cool. I mean, I still had fun. Let's not kid ourselves. But I did understand that I didn't have a writing background. I was coming at a disadvantage. And the way that in my life I've made up for that is by putting in the work and working hard. And I stayed in and I sent emails and I called people and I wrote drafts for no money. and really tried to get my foot in the door, which took a lot of rejection, a lot of just thinking I'm not good enough, but and a lot of missed parties to get to that place.
That's amazing. And I think it's such a growing trend these days is to do stuff for free, to reach out to people and say, hey, I wrote this, and not even ask for anything in return, but just provide enough free, valuable, great and entertaining content for people. And a lot of times, or for people who've quote unquote made it, it's really come back to work out for them that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship. If you're providing something of value, you should expect to get paid for it, or there should be some kind of compensation. That being said, I have had to just work in my free time because I knew, creating scripts and decks and writing packages and all of these things that you don't necessarily get paid for. No one's paying you to do it, but it's because I enjoy it and that I believe in the things that I'm doing and hope someone else will too. So if you like doing it, you're going to do it no matter what. So that's kind of my stance. But if you're doing something of value and you have experience, you should be getting paid for it. Mic drop.
Right. And well, that's the second time we'll end this episode, just for emphasis on the mic drop.
I already left the room. I'm already gone. I'm at home.
John's going to sound significantly quieter for the rest of the episode. Let's go back to your point on, I found that tidbit really, really interesting, how you said that you were anti-Twitter and sort of anti-social media at the start. Mm-hmm. What was it that finally convinced you to sign up for Twitter and get those thoughts from out of your head to super public?
Yeah, well, and also I literally just got an Instagram too, like I think last week.
Yes.
Which I was also like the last one of all of my friends, which
I think it was like 6.999 billion people in the world, users, I think, of Instagram. And then we're all like, all right, you know what, John's on. Okay, we're good now.
It's not cool anymore. Everyone's like, all right, maybe this thing was stupid. No, but and obviously now that this is kind of my life, I try to stay ahead of the trends more, at least to the point where I'm, reading up on the different platforms and tools. But yeah, the reason why I got Twitter was because I loved writing and I loved telling jokes. I mean, I was like the definition of the class clown. I like making people feel better. I think that humor can be really powerful for a number of reasons. It can help us discuss like uncomfortable topics. It can obviously, you see a lot these days speaking truth to power. I've always felt like comedians kind of played by a different set of rules. You didn't have to paint inside of the lines, and you could make some really profound commentary in different ways than politicians or some of these other people. But I didn't know where to start, and I didn't know how to get my foot in the door. And so, social media, Twitter, free tool, anyone can kind of just pick up and start jotting down your thoughts. And I decided to do it. And luckily I, some people for whatever reason seem to kind of react in a good way to that. So
yeah, exactly. Well, you have, your family follows you, and I'm sure a few others. So
it's only my family. I have a very large family.
And you have a bunch of burner accounts, right, that engage with your oh no.
I'm like like Kevin Durant. Yeah. And anytime you see a reply, it's from my burner account to myself.
Wow, amazing you were able to get multiple accounts verified then.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Wow. So let's pivot a little bit to a creativity segment. So let's talk about unleashing creativity. So I think, so this is a big theme on the Wild Business Growth podcast. We love to sort of dive deep into how creativity plays into people's everyday lives and professional lives, and what they do to bring about that creativity, and how important it is to stay creative and original and genuine. So first thing under this topic is, how does creativity play a role into your professional and your personal career?
Creativity is everything, especially now. Again, I hate to go back to social media, but there's so much noise. There's so many people competing for the same thing, the same joke. It's really easy to feel overwhelmed, and it's really easy to be unoriginal. You see that a lot on Twitter. I'm guilty of that too. It's just, hard to keep one upping yourself. And, there are a lot of creative people out there that are really smart and really clever. So I try to approach everything from the mindset of, you know, maybe I'll have an idea and then I take a step back and say, what's the next level of this? Whether it's a script, whether it's a joke, like the first thing you think of isn't always the most original or the most creative. So it's thinking, how can I go step deeper with that? And whether, and Max, I know that you are big on this too, because we've talked about what you're doing over there in your role. And the fact of the matter is, whether you are writing website copy or doing email marketing campaigns or writing comedy, whatever it is, we need to constantly adapt and evolve and find new ways to present information. That's why we've seen this podcast boom too. It's why we're seeing, what Snapchat was big for a while, although I think it's maybe, I'm not sure what's up with that these days. But you see all these different tools and these different ways to tell stories, and it's important to always be adapting. So whether I'm doing the most mundane thing in the world or doing something really exciting, I try to bring the same level of creative focus to that.
Right. That's a great philosophy. So what do you do to stay creative?
Well, I'm not creative. I said I try to. But it's, first of all, it is hard, at least for me, and I'm very open about that. Of course, there's sometimes I sit down and write, and it just goes flowing onto the paper, and I write, 1,000 words, whatever, and it's really easy. It feels like I'm in a groove. But there are other times where I just nothing is working. I find this a lot of wrote a lot of taglines for various clients and businesses, and that's something where I see a lot of need to switch up my approach, because taglines are something that are so it has to be so concise, has to be accurate, original, all of these things. And as a lot of writers will tell you, it's easier to write a lot and be very wordy than write concisely and sharply. And so when something like that happens, one thing I've found success in is I work from a laptop most of the time. So getting up and physically changing the environment that I'm in, that sometimes helps me. I'll read. I think it might be counterintuitive, but whenever I'm having trouble writing or thinking of ideas, sometimes, yes, it is the case that it's just a numbers game and you have to write more. But a lot of the time, I think it's no, stop, maybe take a step back and listen, take in the world around you, be more present. That's when I feel the most inspired, because a funny story will happen, or like a funny interaction. The other day, just for an example, I was feeling stuck. So I went to meet some of my friends for like an hour at one of our neighborhood bars. And I got there and I handed the bouncer my ID, and she looked at it and she said something like, "Oh, like it's good that you're short. If I was a guy, I don't think I would want to be tall." And I thought that was like the most absurd, like backhanded compliment, like, but it turned into like something like a joke that I wrote later. But I thought it was just a very funny situation. And comedians will say this all the time, but it's like, you have to live your life. You have to be present. You have to put yourself out there. And that's when you'll get things in return. If you stay, alone, locked up in your room, you're not going to have a lot of stories to tell. So that's what I would recommend. And I can tell you where my source for inspiration is too, if that would help.
Yeah. So we let's save that thought for a little. We'll get into sort of a more
Saving it.
We'll save it. Save it. Yeah, save it to your new Instagram account and your drafts.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's say we'll have an inspiration segment a little bit later on. For now, I want to first. Yes, you see, we're getting into a little rising action here. So I want to call out for the record that John is not short. John, I've never thought you were short.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I'm like very comfortable with my height. I don't stick out like terribly when I'm walking around, but also I'm not like too short. I feel like I'm very average so yes, I am a little, as you can tell in my voice, I am a little bitter about that comment. That kind of threw me off for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I've always, and what are you? You're what, 7'2", 7'3"? I mean,
yeah, I'm 6'11", which is like it's a fine
and that's probably
height
on a bad day. So it's really,
because I wear stilts a lot of the time.
It was an outrageous comment. If anybody is commenting on your appearance and doesn't mention how extremely good looking you are, then it's a
oh, Max. Oh, stop.
And again, and I you can, I will give you my banking information later. So Let's I like that how you brought up writer's block. Do you encounter that a lot?
I encounter it I think as much as a lot of writers I know do. It's tough to get inspired, and again, it's a situational basis. It depends the topic I'm writing about. It depends how well researched it is beforehand. I'm not going to act like I don't ever get writer's block, and I'm not going to act like writing is the hardest thing ever. Although it is. It's again, it goes back to how inspired are you, how well researched and well thought out is your premise and your argument, your story, and creativity and inspiration strikes at different times. So it really is situational, at least for me. I will say that I met with a pretty well known writer who I will not mention by name. But I remember I was so happy to meet him, and I reached out. This was when I first moved to DC, and I reached out and I was like, "Hey, would you mind? Could we, meet? And I have a lot of questions I would love to ask and hear your perspective." And I remember I asked him this question. I was like, "Do you ever experience writer's block?" And right away, he was like, "No, I don't. Never." He's like, "I can write in any environment, like no matter how loud, no matter how chaotic." And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. I assume he is. He's really successful. But I heard that and I was like, shit, should I be in a different profession? That kind of made me think twice. But the majority of the people I meet with experience writer's block.
Wow, that's an amazing response.
Yeah, it was like so quick.
So I know. So you don't have to mention his name, but I have a pretty good feeling it was Ernest Hemingway, wasn't it?
Yes, that's
Oh my God.
correct. Can we edit this
Yeah,
part out?
we'll have to edit out later. I had a feeling. I had a
Jeez.
hankering. I had a feeling.
Well, you know me, so yeah, you're right.
John was the old man in the sea.
It's all coming together, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's all making
Right.
sense.
Precisely. So let's talk about humor in comedy, sort of the funny business, the combination of humor and branding and personal branding. So on that first note for that.
Are we recording this? I'm just kidding.
There we go. That's perfect. Yeah, perfect time. That's the third time we'll stop the show today.
I hate myself right now. All right.
Okay, so funny business. So this applies to plenty of different platforms and writing outlets for you, or at least that your process might. But what's the main way that you come up with your tweets? Because you're constantly coming up with funny tweets that people respond pretty well to.
Well, first of all, thank you.
You're welcome. Retweet.
Again, it's like, I mean, my whole thing with Twitter is it's such a like immediate way to hopefully put someone in a good mood. There's a lot of chaos out there. And for people who, I don't know if anyone listening to this knows who I am or follows my account, but I pay attention to the news a lot. I do a lot of political commentary, and sometimes, it's overwhelming and it's quite frankly just, like dark times. And so I feel like something like a tweet where it's less than 140 characters. I keep it under 140 characters still, like I don't mess around with making them longer, but I feel like that is such a quick way to put a smile on someone's face. And really, like when people reach out and say, "You really make my day," or I'm going through a lot right now and this made me laugh. Like that is the best thing to hear. Like that is what keeps me going. That's why I do this. But I think it's really interesting that you mentioned the process, right? I talk a lot about this. It's partly, yes, you have to be funny, but also part is the process and the approach. You can approach everything like a comedian. And you may be wondering what I'm talking about. And I mean, looking for the right questions to ask, looking for the punchline, like what really needs to be the setup here. There are ways you can think of it as a formula in order to make a better product. And I think that relates perfectly to branding and marketing. Like at the end of the day, a lot of comedy is storytelling and it's exposing truths, and it's there's a reason why like you wait to the end and then you laugh. It's because it's like scientific and it's formulaic. And I kind of approach Twitter that same way. And it goes through some I'll just rattle off and not really care, and some I'll think through a little bit more. At the end of the day, it's a great place for me to show my own personality and and be true to
Right.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a perfect match.
What is your process?
So my process, I have a dartboard with actually your face on it, and I take turns throwing
This
darts
is
at it.
getting dark. This is making me uncomfortable.
Cool. Yeah, which is great. I know that's what I strive for. But I, just take turns throwing darts until an idea comes into my head, and then
Okay, so this is true. This is not a bit. This is actually what you do.
no, we're gonna record this with video and then put it on YouTube, and then
Oh,
we can show everybody.
should be recording this video. That'd be wonderful. Well, do you are you active on social media on Twitter and Instagram?
Oh yeah. Well, you mean as a business or personally?
Either. I mean, so what I'm getting at is, what do you have a process for when you are trying to construct like the perfect tweet or the thing that will go viral?
Yeah. Well, I think all of my tweets are probably perfect.
It's just a matter of followers. If you had more followers, every single one would be viral.
Right. Yes. Especially the ones.
That's what every client says, by the way. It's never me. It's always something else.
Right. Exactly. It's always. I mean, it is always. Every now and then, or all the time, you get those tweets that you're just like, man, I am really clever, and then it's like, well, some people saw it, and no one really engaged with it, but yeah, but I feel good about myself. But
I have more questions, Max. Okay, keep going.
Yes. Well, I'll answer this one seriously first. I kind of like what you were saying before. I've always found that social media it's way easier. It's way better when you're commenting on stuff that's actually happening around you. So sometimes I'll just have random thoughts, and I happen to think in puns. So like my saves draft are all just terrible puns, like not punny whatsoever. And so we'll see. Maybe I'll release them someday.
Can you read one of them right now for the audience?
One
of mine. I just pulled one of mine out, and all it says is Carmen Sandiego. I have no idea what that means.
That's the best, right? Because you probably thought of it at like 1 a.m. on a Friday sometime, and you're like, this is going to be gold. And then you look back and you're like,
I might have had some drinks for some reason.
Right, exactly. Let's pull up my drafts here. We'll go.
Another one of mine just says hot air balloon, but for dogs only. So I don't know if that was like a business proposal I was gonna write sometime, or I also take notes all the time. I guess going back to like the creativity thing and when inspiration strikes, I have like the Notepad app on I don't want to brag, but I have the Notepad app on my iPhone.
Yeah, humble brag.
Yeah, humble brag. And I take notes all the time throughout the day. Just like on observations and commentary and things I'll, put together better later.
It's a great tool. It's hard. I mean, you can't, this applies to anything in life, but you cannot remember everything. Like it's simply impossible.
I'm so bad at remembering things.
That's not like a command like, dude, you suck at remembering.
No, but I do though.
Okay, I got my drafts. Here we go. This is a good one. I was the 40-year-old Persian.
Oh God. Okay, so, I think I've heard enough.
Yeah, so I was watching 40-year-old version because that's what I want my life to be like when I'm 40. Sure. And I, it really just rolled off the tongue. I was 40-year-old Persian. I was like, huh, that's interesting.
That's like the sequel
with Michael Scott and some others, or Steve Carell rather. But I have another one that I have yet to do that is probably better for Snapchat or Instagram, because Snapchat, it definitely won't go viral because no one will see it. So that's great. So I have just a note that says feeling myself, and I'm going to do a picture of me just, feeling like my chest or my shoulder.
That's great. Although I will say that like images do really well. I've been trying to I think that's part of the reason I didn't get Instagram is because I put a lot of images with like captions like that on Twitter already. And like if you look at people have already, like my friends have texted me about this already. They're like, you're using Instagram wrong. You're just using it like Twitter. Yeah.
Well, you're like a Twitter baby once you adopted it.
Yeah. So like I think there's a learning curve, but I mean obviously people like to see visual things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a perfect segue. I mean, you really painted a picture with your words there. So I've always found, and I was a late adopter to Instagram too, and by that I mean 3 years ago. But at the yeah, that was a little.
So you founded Instagram.
I found yeah, exactly. No, but I remember because I feel like I got on Twitter pretty early
Mhm.
on, like back, like it was like early high school for us, and it was just starting to get big. But Instagram, it was like I had some good friends that were, for perspective on what John's going through. This is 3 years ago, so extrapolate this, but
Can people send me cards like thoughts and prayers for joining Instagram someday?
exactly,
I need
condolences.
it.
Some of my best friends were like, dude, you got to get on the gram. You got to get on the gram. It's where you're at. You got to get on the gram. And I was like, no, no, no. I was never going on it. And then when I joined it, and obviously now it's huge and it's only getting bigger and it's growing like crazy. So I'm glad I joined, and I'm sure you're glad you're joined too. And you'll build up a great following there. But
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I never adopted it at first was, like you said, I believe there's so much power in words in copywriting,
Sure.
and that there's so much humor potential in that world. And I've always thought sort of the same thing. It's like it's so easy to have sort of a witty thought or a pun go through your head and either tweet it out or save it in a draft and never tweet it, and then it brightens up people's day a little bit. So that was kind of my resistance, like you, from joining
Yeah.
these more visual platforms that are growing like crazy. But totally think there's ways to be funny both
Mhm.
with words and with text. And as obviously as memes are so popular, the combination of both is perfect.
Yes.
Hi, this is Greg Brandstetter, founder of Hippo Direct. Has all this wild growth talk made you hungry for some new customers? Well, here's your recipe for success. Hippo Direct can help you acquire new clients using proven methods such as postal mailings, email marketing, and targeted ads on Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We can even create a customized leads and prospecting database for you. So check out hippodirect.com and contact us today.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the benefits of being funny that you've seen?
The benefits of being funny, like for me personally, or for like,
Like, yeah, so well, yes, yeah, with your personal brand, but also with some of the content and copywriting stuff you've done.
sure.
What's the benefits of being funny for whether it be a personal brand or a professional?
Well, I think one of the benefits that I found from like trying to use humor is just that you kind of have an ability to say what's on your mind, which I think can be good and bad. Good if used the right way and you're doing it for the betterment of society or for a situation. Bad because I often feel like people use, I mean, you hear this all the time, like I was just joking, or oh, that was obviously a joke when it clearly wasn't. So sometimes people use comedy as a crutch, which is unfortunate. And but from a branding side, there are tons of benefits. And the caveat I will say at the beginning is that, of course, being funny, using humor isn't always the best way to go for every brand. And that's, again, I'll direct back to that's why the process of thinking like a writer, thinking like a comedian can be helpful. But I'm not going to, for a cybersecurity, national security, whatever, I'm probably not going to recommend humor. But for something like a weed dispensary, which was one of my clients, or a biking, somewhere that like a bike shop, there's some other ways that you can take something kind of mundane, kind of something that people don't really know a lot about, and humor is a great way to pique their interest enough to learn more. I mean, there are numerous studies about how memorable humor is and about how it can like humanize your brand so well to create, to like take down the walls and make it feel more like a conversation. Like people are so hyper aware these days about brands trying to sell things to you and being fake and just like wanting money, that I think personally that's why I think podcasts are so big right now. We're sick of commercials and like all of this pre-scripted nonsense. That podcast is like a very raw form of storytelling and communication. I think humor is a great way to break down those boundaries and make it more like a human to human conversation versus a brand to human.
Right. Yeah, it's so powerful. And that's a perfect segue because we're going to do a half hour starting now of strictly ads. So we did sort of we did the non-ad space, and it's time to get some right hooks, as Gary Vee says. So, but it is super powerful. I think there you can create so much momentum with humor. It's funny that you mention how things can be misinterpreted, especially on social media. And I know you are super sarcastic. I'm the same way as well. And I've seen it in real life interactions as well as tweets. Is sometimes sarcasm just doesn't register
Sure.
when it's in text form. Has that ever come back to bite you?
Luckily not as much as some other I've seen it with some other people. I am very sarcastic, like you will know that once you talk to me. But at the same time, I try not to go too overboard, especially when it's in writing and I have a chance to think about it. I really try to be aware and sensitive to things and make sure I'm not crossing any lines, rather that I'm walking kind of right up to it where I can make a point. But I try to not take it too far. I'm of course there's been instances where I've made mistakes and probably, like we all do, probably said something that was meant to be a joke and maybe rightfully so was taken the wrong way. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure I have. But especially when it's in writing and when I have a chance to think about it, I try to be as sensitive and like I try not to be an asshole really as much as I
Yeah.
can.
Which is kind of a good
It's just a good
mantra for
mantra.
anyone.
Yeah, just don't be an asshole.
Right. Cool. I
have a
might
tattoo that says that across
I
my
was
knuckles.
Damn it, you beat me to. I was gonna say I might get that tattooed on. Well, I'm not gonna tell you where. Tattooed on your knuckles. That's perfect.
I have like 20 knuckles. I have extra knuckles.
The man with no shortage of knuckles. So you mentioned the process a lot, and I think
Trust the process.
yes,
Big
exactly.
basketball fan over here.
Joel Embiid has really championed that movement with trust the process, and now,
And social
which
media.
is crazy. Exactly. Yeah, I mean he's on fire, and his whole kind of romance with Rihanna really helped to propel it over the top as well. But I'm sure we've all dated Rihanna at some point. But on that NBA note, so you mentioned you're a big basketball fan.
Indeed.
And you've done some work for an NBA player. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's not like a secret or anything. So Tobias Harris, who's a forward on the Clippers now. He was on Detroit before, but we helped him. This creative agency I work with, Punch, we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to kind of rebrand his brand and his website. It's kind of an interesting case study. You see athletes so much these days. It's not just about what they do on the court. It's really important what they're doing off the court. I mean, you see LeBron James, you see Chris Paul. People are being activists and people want to volunteer and want to make the world a better place. And so they're no longer wishing to be constricted to just playing basketball.
Right.
And so what we did with Tobias was we made his website and his brand kind of like this multi-dimensional. Yes, he plays basketball and he's great. I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, but he's young and he's a very underrated player, and people need to know about him. That's just from a basketball standpoint. And he's like one of the nicest, most caring, like selfless, hardworking players and people out there. But we made his brand like focus more on his volunteer work and what he does off the court and like the partnerships that he has and all these times when he goes back to like his high school and his where he grew up and volunteers and like all this different stuff, because people want to do good and people want to make society better. And I think people are tired, whether you're like working at an agency or behind a desk, or you're a musician or a celebrity or an athlete, like no matter where you are on the spectrum of what you do, like no one wants their job necessarily to define who they are as a person. And that's kind of what we were digging into there and trying to expand how we define an athlete in today's world.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so.
Anyway, I'm a professional NBA player now, and I'm in the NBA.
Yes, you could find John. So John, it depends it depends if you ask LeBron or John, but some would say John is the number 2 option on the Lakers. I would vouch for number 1, but you can catch him on the Lakers.
You can make the argument.
You can, yeah, you're definitely in the conversation for best player on the Lakers.
Right.
So, but I love Tobias, and I know he's got a lot of diehard fans, and even one time I was at a Cavs game, and he had a whole section that were huge fans for him going back to his days playing at Tennessee in college, and they were just screaming. I mean, they were standing up the whole game. They were yelling Tobias, and
crazy.
So
I mean, it's crazy.
He seems like a really, really, really great guy. What's the name of the website so our listeners can check it out?
I believe you can just go to tobiasharris.com. That should get you there. It might be, maybe don't check it out because it might be broken currently.
Okay.
Oh, not broken, but I think some things are out of place. But no, check it out, follow him. I mean, and that's just like one aspect. The reason why I love doing copywriting, as this, again, thinking about, I'm not just a comedian, I'm not just a writer, I'm not just someone in marketing. It's how all of these things overlap. And one reason is because I love working with people like a Tobias, or like the person who's just building their own business and maybe needs some help to get them off the ground, or with the one person shop who has never touched social media before and doesn't know how to use WordPress. I don't want to just focus on any one aspect. And I think it's really powerful. And I hope everyone can like find that Venn diagram, the middle of what they love to do, and find creative ways to connect them.
Right. And if that website's not working, we'll of course edit it out. But if it is, Tobias should see an uptick of probably around 1 to 1.5 billion in site visitors next month. So
perfect. And tell them to be friends with me, because I need to be better friends with him.
Perfect. All right, Tobias, I'm sure you're a first listener, so you heard John loud and clear. All right. So that's I love diving into sort of the comedy and that world, which is
for sure,
which is funny if you ask me. Next segment, we'll move along here. So you did a great foreshadowing earlier about inspiration, sources of inspiration for you. So this segment is all about inspiration, and I want to talk briefly about people, hobbies, and resources.
Cool.
So who would you say is your biggest influence? It can be personal or professional.
Jeez, I mean, so many. This isn't going to be like, an exciting thing, but my brother has to be at the top of that list.
I think your brother's super exciting.
Have you ever met him?
No, but I just envision him being exciting.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's funny because people sometimes know me because of my, just like, I put everything on the internet.
Yeah.
But really, like, he's a lot funnier. He's way smarter. And I'm not even just like saying that, like, he really is. He's the reason why I like try to push myself and think critically and just like be as quick-witted as I can. It's because like I've learned that from him. He's done various comedy things and just super smart. And so just growing up around someone like that, and my dad too. Mom, you're pretty funny, but Dad's a little funnier. But like growing up in that household where people are just like being goofy and encouraging you to be yourself and always dishing jokes, like that really has helped me be more comfortable with who I am and not being afraid to like make people laugh, even if I'm, considered a little goofy. So definitely my brother. There's been obviously like numerous people throughout my life. I don't really want to like name drop too hard, but like I've been fortunate to meet with some comedians that I really look up to and admire, and just like soak in any of their advice, which has been great. That's like sometimes been in times of like me really needing a pep talk or something. And it's just like, it's hard to attribute it to any one or like two people. It's really an accumulation of so many people throughout my career so far.
Right. That sounds like a very funny household to grow up in. You guys are constantly, I'm sure
great.
You constantly kept each other entertained.
Still do.
So for hobbies, how do you like to spend your free time outside of stuff that, let's say, outside of social media and outside the work that you're doing?
Right.
Do you have any passion areas, things that you love to do in your free time?
Watching the news and getting mad. It's tough. Like I've been better about this, and I try to hold myself accountable, and I try to get others to hold myself accountable. But I work a lot, like all the time. It's one of those things where I'm pretty competitive, and I also know like every second I'm not working, someone else is. And so I try to do a lot of work in my downtime. But like outside of that, I play in like this band that we do like open mics and random concerts every now and then. I'm a big musician. I think that does like have some overlap with like the improv and trying to problem solve. And when you're on stage with other people, it's how do you tell a story together, and the give and take, and letting someone else have a turn and taking your turn. I think that's really important. I try to play tennis. I've been going on runs lately, like not because I'm athletic, just for the sense of it makes me feel very present when I'm just like running and taking in the surroundings around me.
Do you do the Forrest Gump, just start running and never stop?
Yeah, especially because I'm in DC. I just keep running until I'm not in DC anymore, and then I never come back and I start a new life.
There we go. 6-pack season has begun.
There you go. Besides that, I mean, so I try to stay busy. Unfortunately, like if you ask anyone, although I do work a lot, I'm kind of a hypocrite. I think having a balance is really important because you can get burned out too pretty easily. So if I do feel myself getting burned out, I'll make sure to take a weekend to myself, or
Right.
I'm also kind of a big introvert, so I'll
Which you would never guess.
come home and watch Netflix or what's up?
I said what you would never guess about the introvert side.
Yeah, well, that's crazy too. I think there has been like a misconception about what it means to be an introvert. When I'm around people, I love it, and I love obviously talking and being in front of people, and I have no problem public speaking. But they're like, when I need to be alone and recharge, I need to be alone and recharge. And sometimes that's what people don't get. They're like, what do you mean you love hanging out and going out on weekends and whatever? And it's like, yes, I do. But that's not how I get my energy. If I'm doing that, there needs to also be a balance of me, having some alone time.
Right. Yeah. It's draining if you're super social all the time.
It really is.
And you mentioned you play in the band. What instrument do you play?
I play guitar mostly, and that
Nice.
I've always just, kind of grown up playing music.
Right. Yeah. Started with the electric triangle, moved to the acoustic triangle. And
Exactly. See, that's the thing. A lot of people go the other way. They start with the acoustic, and then once they get good, they move to the electric triangle. I tried to do kind of like the opposite. I gave people this like everything I could, and then right when they wanted more, I kind of brought it back, and I was like, nah, I'm acoustic now. It's just me. And it's cool having a one-man acoustic triangle show. People seem to really like that.
It's really cool. It's really next wave sort of Illuminati stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it's art at the end of the day. What can I say? It's like some people either get it or you don't.
Right. Yeah. Creative genius. Here we go. Do you have a favorite person that you follow on Twitter?
Wow. Jeez. I feel there's so many people I like on Twitter.
Got it. It probably starts with the Hippo Direct Twitter account, right?
Well, that's obviously number one.
Thank you.
Then it's my producer who produces my one-man electric or acoustic triangle show. He has some pretty good tweets.
Easily top of mind.
There are a bunch of people, and it's like cool too, being able to find people that inspire me and are creative, and like be able to just let them know, like, hey, I really admire what you're doing, or getting the chance. I think a big thing is how to convert online digital friends to real life. What is it? IRL friends. That's something I try to be better about. So while I think the way that things are moving, like, you're obviously going to get to know people online, especially the generations younger than us. But I think the trick is like not just keeping it there, like try getting together. So I've tried to like make actual friends through Twitter, which has worked. But I don't know, there's great accounts for different reasons. Like obviously I get to follow a lot of my favorite comedians and writers. I also get to follow a lot of activists and people who like inspire me to be a better person and challenge me for a different way.
Right.
So it's hard to pick any one account.
And probably the favorite person you follow with your burner accounts is you.
I only follow me with my burner accounts. That's how you can tell. If you go to any of my burner accounts, the only person they're following it's just me. And the only things they comment on or like is just my stuff.
That's great. That's the age old tell. And I think
exactly
Twitter is starting to cut down on those, so you better be careful.
I know. I lost like a few followers the other day because they did they did that like massive cut,
the purge
of like bots and stuff. Yeah, the purge. That's what it was.
Yeah. I have 0 followers now. I don't know how it happened. It just like overnight.
Yeah. I have negative followers.
It's amazing. Yeah. you just follow people. No one follows you.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now it's time for the wild business shout out of the week.
The wild business shout out of the week.
So this is something we do every week.
Woo.
Yeah.
Wild.
Woohoo. The wild business shout out. Yeah, I will. I'm working on my singing voice. Eventually, I'm going to sing that segment intro. So this is something we do every single week on the Wild Business Growth podcast. And we talk about a recent creative marketing or viral marketing campaign that caught our attention, and we talk about what we thought was cool about it and just discuss it for a little bit. What we want to talk about today is the Walmart Yodel Kid or Walmart Yodel Boy. That was, what was that? Probably a month or two ago, went super viral.
Was it just a month or two ago?
I think it was. It was pretty recent. Dang. It was definitely, sometime between when you had that meeting with Ernest Hemingway and now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think a couple months ago. But anyway, for anybody that doesn't know, for the living under the rock people, there's a little, I think it's maybe a 10-year-old or so boy that was yodeling in a Walmart in the Midwest, and he's an incredible yodeler.
I wonder how many people do that. I wonder how many people have yodeled in a Walmart in the Midwest. Probably not just him. I would have to guess.
Probably not. That's the thing. There's probably so many. I mean, it's a real career path now. There's probably, the next generation Z,
college courses,
whatever comes after Z is going to, they're going to devote their career to that. But incredible yodeling voice, especially at such a young age. And someone filmed it, put it on YouTube, and it went super viral, and it went all super viral throughout social media. But anyway, saw recently that, at the time of this recording, it will be this Friday that he is releasing his debut album, which is amazing.
Too Yodel, Too Furious.
Exactly. That's what it's called, right?
Do we know the name of the album? Oh, okay, good.
I don't. I imagine it's something about Walmart greeters, something in that line. But anyway, it's kind of what we were talking about before. It's so cool how something can just start as a viral thing online, and these days it can literally change your life. So you saw it with the mom that was wearing the Chewbacca mask a few years ago, and now you're seeing, we see it with tons of people all the time. But the Yodel boy is going to be a huge star now. I mean, he already is, and he can literally make his career out of this. Like, it depends how much he wants to go full in on it. But
exactly.
As soon as he went viral, he got a record deal, and that was really, I think in just a few week or a month period. So that's insane. Do you have any thoughts on that, John? Do you remember that campaign? It's not really a campaign, but do you remember the video and have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember that campaign for Pepsi. What was it? It was some brand.
Oh no,
that would be like the most 2018 thing ever if the Yodel Kid turned out to be like a brand campaign. But yeah, no, I remember it, and I do have some thoughts on it.
Perfect. Can you share them?
Yeah, that's why I'm here, right? To share my. So, yes, we live in a really interesting time where you can go viral. It can change your life. We've seen it countless times. That can be really cool. It seems like he's embracing it really well. What he performed at Coachella, before Beyonce or something, what? He shouldn't even be on the same stage as Beyonce.
What?
But that's obviously very cool, and it's gonna change his life. On the other hand, we have. Do you remember the Plane Bay saga?
Yeah.
So that just happened, and that was a viral moment that was captured. But it turned out that the subjects, the people that were being recorded without them knowing, at least one of them, the woman, didn't want the attention, did not want to go viral.
I didn't know that part. Because the other one, it was a soccer player, right?
It was a soccer player, and he was embracing it. He went on it was either the Today Show or Good Morning America. He was tweeting all of his followers saying he was so happy. So you just see this kind of juxtaposition of, yeah, if you embrace it and you want it and you know about it, that's awesome that you can, in some situations, not have anything, not have any resources, maybe be at a disadvantage, not specifically the Yodel Kid, but there are these ways that you can achieve success and achieve your dream simply just by showing up and being in the right place at the right time and having some skill or talent. On the other hand, the downside, which is a huge downside and a privacy concern, is that, and we see this a lot too, sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not, but for an innocent person who's just minding their business and ends up going viral, there can be a lot of damage there. So it's like this new kind of era that we haven't yet fully seen what is possible and what can happen. And it's just something we're going to have to navigate and be careful of.
Right. Yeah. And it's going to be super interesting to see it all play out. And I think obviously the key to success for the next generation is to go to whatever brick and mortar stores are left and start yodeling.
I think so. I think that's the lesson, the ultimate lesson that can be learned here is work on those yodeling skills.
Perfect. We're on the same page. All right. So we got a couple more quick, totally non-business related subjects here.
Thank God. I hate business.
Here we go. Yeah, I mean, we all hate business here on the Wild Business Growth Podcast, but
business. It's so draining. Buzzwords, circling back.
So this is a segment called The Unusual: Phrases, Quirks, and Pet Peeves. So it's always interesting to hear
things that people do or things that people strongly dislike or just ticks them off for some reason that are either commonplace and everybody else does it, or not commonplace, and at a certain point you realize, holy shit, I'm the only person that does this. So first thing, what is your biggest pet peeve?
People being assholes, but also people like when there's a really quiet part in a movie theater and like they're reaching into their popcorn really aggressively or like ruffling candy around or something next to me.
Yeah.
Or like at a play. Oh my God, this is where it happened to, okay, now I'm going to sound like a dick, but I was at Hamilton the other day.
Dick.
And there was a quiet part. Yeah. And there's a quiet part. And the person next to me like had a bunch of food that they brought and was like making a ton of noise. And I don't know, do you think that's valid or is that like a stupid pet peeve to have?
I think it's valid if you're at a, oh no, the pet peeve is definitely valid.
Okay.
I thought you were asking if the making of the noise was valid. I was going to say the making of the noise is
no, just the pet peeve in general.
Yeah.
Like, is that something I should be upset about? Like that, because that's something. If I like try. Maybe it's because I'm like too. I don't know. I'm like a middle child, and I always like feel like I'm the one trying to make sure everyone is like comfortable and okay. So like I try not to do that, but maybe I'm wrong, Max. That's possible.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're just wrong, John.
That's fine.
I think making the noise in a movie theater is with your snacks is totally, well, not even a movie. I think making the noise with snacks is totally fine if you're at like a snack making noise convention, but
that's the only time it
yes,
should be fine.
pretty much everywhere else it's probably frowned upon. So I think you're.
Have you ever been to a snack making noise convention? They're pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually got some earmuffs for them last time. It was a little noisy.
They hand them out to you when you go there.
Yeah, I didn't read the fine print, and they also hand out some Raisinets and
Milk Duds. Well, they don't really make noise.
No,
they're just awful.
they're
That's
kinda...
a pet peeve too. Okay, this is back to a question. You were like, have you ever tweeted something and then it been taken the wrong way or like people get angry? I tweeted one time I was like, I don't really like Milk Duds. Like that's what it was. And that was the biggest backlash I've ever had on Twitter.
Oh.
Like it was people, there were like so many responses of people yelling at me. People were like quote tweeting and sharing the quote being like, fuck this guy. Like, are you, and it was insane. I'd like turn my phone off because of Milk Duds. I didn't know so many people liked them.
Yeah. I feel like it's tough. Like I feel like there's a lot of brands out there that are easy to joke about and easy to include and stuff like that.
I guess don't joke about Milk Duds because people will get really mad at you.
Right. By the way, Milk Duds, we're looking for sponsors if you'd like to, hit me up. But on that note, but you have had, I think it was earlier this year, you had that tweet about spiders that went like mega viral.
Oh,
is that your most your most viral tweet so far?
That's my most viral tweet. Yeah, but that was like it's like, and you never can control. This is the other thing that kind of pisses me off. Just because a good lesson too. Okay, now you're really getting me fired up, Max.
It's the spiders.
Just because something goes viral doesn't mean that it's good, and just because someone has a lot of followers doesn't necessarily mean that they're creating the best content. And that's something I tell clients and people and myself all the time. One, to keep a level head, but just to understand like numbers don't directly apply to how clever, how creative, how, like there are so many missed opportunities and that's a great example. Like that was just like a dumb kind of thing. And I'd like to think that I've had a lot of not just tweets, but like other work, other videos that I've done that I felt a lot more proud of, and like other things I see out of other people every single day that don't go viral. So it's just like a very interesting environment. But yeah, that was the biggest tweet I think that went viral, and I had to like mute my phone right away.
What's that like on the tweeters end of that? Is your phone just exploding?
Yeah, well, people will tell you like the worst thing on Twitter is when your tweet gets added to like a moment. Are you familiar with like those Twitter moment things that are kind of
new?
Of course. So like if you go viral, if you get added to like one of those things, it basically just opens up a big pile on. You could have the funniest tweet, you could have the best, most sound argument, you could say the most innocent thing. It does not matter. Once your work is out there, and like if you put something out there, you cannot from the tweeters end, like the pile on that comes because of that.
Yeah.
It's absurd. It's like really absurd no matter what you tweeted about. So it's kind of crazy. it is fun though. Like that was one of the first times I experienced like people actually, like my friends, like texting me about it that they saw it
Yeah.
places. So that was kind of
I
fun.
remember seeing it in like I see it in my timeline all the time because you're the only person I follow. But I bet
burner account. You're my burner.
yeah,
account.
exactly. Disguised as Max Brandstetter. But
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and was like, wow. I mean that tweet really started to pick up like so engagement wise. And then I like went back and looked like a day or two after and was like, oh my God. Like John I can't imagine what like John is going through right now. It's insane. But I think
I threw my phone in a lake.
right. So if you don't see any tweets from John for a while, that is why.
And that's the other thing, like social media can be really overwhelming too. Like I try not to get wrapped up into it, but you do feel the pressure sometimes, like, oh, do I have to be tweeting? Do I have to be commenting on this? Do I have to be sharing my work? Like, should I not have said this? Should I have said this instead? It's like, at the end of the day, just try to have fun and try to be yourself and don't worry too much about it.
Right. It's a good way to live. Good way to tweet. Good way to IG.
Yeah.
I have to ask, since you're from Minneapolis area originally, right?
Yep.
Are there any phrases that you used a lot growing up that when you went to IU or now you realize are very, very distinct to Minneapolis?
Well, I don't know about like, I mean, people always make fun of me. Like they're like, oh, you betcha. But like, I never said that. I never said that growing up.
I have never heard you say that.
Yeah. That's like a phrase that's never came out of my mouth.
Yeah. You betcha.
People will say that I have like an accent sometimes with certain words, which I didn't really know until I moved to, kind of Indiana, but then now really on the East Coast in DC.
Right.
I'll use this as a shout out. I love Minneapolis. I love Minnesota. I'm like the biggest advocate for it. People get sick of hearing me talk about how much I love it. It's just like such a great place. And if you haven't visited, then go visit. There's great dairy products. The state fair is amazing. We have like pretty good sports now. Everyone's super nice. I guess like not a phrase, but like I think I was shocked by how not even mean, but like when I go to Minnesota, it's like you go order something and the cashier or a server or someone will spend 10 minutes like asking how you are and like follow-up questions. It feels like I'm on like a 60 minutes interview, whereas then I come back here and people just kind of go about their day a lot of the time.
I see.
And people, the first time I moved to DC, I remember the first day people yelled at me because I was standing on the wrong side of the escalator.
Oh, well,
so that was
how could you? Was that your first escalator?
The problem was it was my first escalator. I was laying down horizontally on it because I didn't understand how they worked.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, that would be acceptable at an escalator laying down horizontally convention.
Exactly. Have you ever been to one of those?
I did. Yeah, they gave out snacks.
Yeah, they give out snacks and they give out earmuffs in case the escalators.
In case there's a lot of overlap with those two crowds. It's crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You would never think, but I guess that makes sense why they do the conventions at the same time in the same town.
Right. It's really mind blowing. Cool. So thank you for admitting your unusualness with us here. We're gonna do one more fun segment. It's called Rapid Fire Q&A, which is pretty self explanatory.
Cool. Ready?
And yeah, you ready? You got your
I have Wikipedia up and Google up. I have 4 other people in this room, like it's Trivia HQ.
Oh, perfect. Cool. We got Scott Rogowski here, so be ready.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite type of cookie?
Oatmeal raisin, don't at me.
I happen to agree. Don't at John.
Okay. Oh, with walnuts too.
Oh. Very underrated nuts. All right. Favorite show to binge watch?
Wow.
Never heard of it.
This is classic, but The Office. I love The Office. I watch that like all the time.
Yeah.
Ozark was one of my favorite Netflix shows that I binge watched like right away. And you know what? I like Riverdale. I think it's very entertaining and it's a good watch.
That's the one with Cole Sprouse?
I think so. I think that's him.
Gotcha. All right. Well, shout out Cole. We'll have you on the podcast next time. Office is obviously a classic. Ozark I love too. It was interesting to see because a lot of people, when I heard about it, they said my friends told me it was sort of like Breaking Bad. And there's a lot of similarities.
There's a vibe. There's a certain vibe. But yeah, I like went right through it in like a weekend.
Yeah. The characters were so entertaining. It's cool. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite meme? I know you're new to Instagram, but Twitter has a ton of them.
Oh, wow. Favorite meme.
It could be all time, like crying Jordan, like...
Oh, the flute girl crying.
Oh, yeah, that's Oh man. Yeah, that's always a rough one. She was Villanova, right? I think so they got the last laugh.
Yeah, and I think there was one of her like smiling or something.
Yeah, she had meme redemption.
So good.
Something we all strive
That's
for.
like the meme. That's the full meme cycle. Like that's when you know you've made it. You've gone through a full meme redemption story arc cycle. It was a ride. I liked it because it was like an emotional ride. I felt like I was part of it.
Right. It's more than a single post.
Right.
Favorite 90s band?
Is Sugar Ray a 90s band?
Sure.
They are now.
They are now. Favorite Nickelodeon show growing up or now?
I always loved Rugrats a lot, and I think like I heard it's coming back or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
They are. Yeah, my mom got so excited. She just emailed me yesterday, actually.
I like Rugrats.
They're coming back. And so there goes all our free time.
Seriously.
If you were stranded on an island with one person, who would it be?
John Mulaney.
Great choice. He's in New York, by the way.
Oh, tell him I say hi.
Will do. Hey, John. John says hi. Oh, hey.
Hey, John.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's
So
actually.
dumb.
Oh,
So
I
dumb.
can't believe I didn't think of it till now. I should have had him on the podcast. He's hanging out in my place.
Oh, he's actually at the snack making noise convention.
Oh, he probably wouldn't be able to hear us then. Okay. And then spin off of that last one. If you were stranded on an island with one object, what would you bring?
Is this for like survival or like,
Whatever you want to bring to an island, however you'd entertain yourself.
I guess, I mean, this might seem like the obvious answer, but I guess I'd bring my kiddish cup from my bar mitzvah.
Yep. That definitely was the obvious answer.
I'm sure people say that all the time, but I mean, I would just like to have it there with
Yeah,
me.
you're getting a little too mainstream and cliche there,
Yeah.
John. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's all right. Your other answers were pretty unique, so
All right. Thank you.
we'll let that one slide. All right, that was rapid fire Q&A. You survived that. How was that for you?
I'm sweating. I'm going to have to go change clothes. That was like so terrifying.
This might be the first time in podcast history that everyone has been able to hear beads of sweat in audio form.
It's not pretty. Not a pretty sight over here.
On that, oh, you're always pretty, John. And on that note, well, John, Mr. Ernest Hemingway, just thanks so much for joining and keep being funny or not funny, keeping not funny, whatever you want.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really, appreciate you thinking of me and having me here. Always great to talk about this kind of stuff, and I hope I do get invited back sometime.
Perfect. Yeah, man. Would absolutely love to have you on, and we'll talk about, maybe we'll have another segment that is just going through our Twitter drafts again, because that
Hopefully.
is finally, who knows, maybe podcast is a better outlet for them than Twitter after all. So on that note, where can the listeners reach out to if they're not following you already, which is probably extremely unlikely? Where can they reach out to you? What are your social media handles?
Yeah, well, if anyone wants to connect, which I always do, love, speaking with people, you can follow me on Twitter at SavittJ, SAVITTJ, and don't really know a lot about Instagram yet, but now I do have one, and I think that's Savitt_John, and you can check out my website if you'd like at johnsavitwrites.com, and look forward to speaking with anyone who reaches out.
Perfect. So if you start following John on Twitter or any of those platforms after this episode, make sure to send them a lot of winky faces and eye emojis.
Of course. Love that.
Which is, the language of love.
Alrighty, whether you wanted it or not, that was the John Savitt experience. Hope you guys laughed or at least cracked half a smile for that one. I know I had a lot of fun talking to John, so thanks for tuning in. This was another episode of the Wild Business Growth Podcast presented by Hippo Direct. We'll catch you next week after you give us 5 stars, at least 5 stars. Special, actually a gold star goes to the person that gives us the most stars. Anyway, we will catch you next time. Download, subscribe, give us 5 stars. Follow us at Hippo Direct. See you next time. Let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!